Hello scholars, you're welcome back to class. Last class we discussed the content analysis of the poem Racism by Sonya Olu. The poet condemns racism, which is the belief that a particular race is better than another, and this discrimination is based on the color of their skin. The poet compares racism to a cankerworm, a caterpillar, and cancer, and this shows the destructive effects of racism. The poet mentioned that the ebony, which represents or which denotes the dark-skinned, which are mostly from Africa, and the ivory, which represents those who are light-skinned. It accused racism of causing division amongst those people who would have lived happily without disunity and conflict. The poet further advised that all and sundry, that is, both the whites and the blacks, should live together in peace and harmony because the world belongs to both. And this we see in the following line: in the land where ebony and ivory owned. We also discussed the themes in the poem. The first, which was the negative effect of racism, and this we saw in the comparison of racism to disastrous and destructive pest and disease known as cancer. So from this comparison, we understand that racism has negative and destructive effects. And secondly, we looked at the need for the blacks and the whites to live together in peace and harmony. Here, the poet admonished all and sundry, that is, both the whites and the black, that they should live together in peace and harmony, as well as do things that can only elongate their lifespan on earth. And this we see in the following lines: giving each other the surviving need, living in the holy universe. And lastly, we looked at the theme of equality of all races that live on earth. The poet mentioned to racism that the whites and the blacks are both human beings, and this we see through the use of the rhetorical question: haven't you seen that people are the same, and ebony and ivory, like good and bad, live same? The poet further states that the blacks and the whites should live together in peace and harmony because the world, that is the universe, belongs to all, to both the whites and the blacks. And this we see in the following lines: with love, peace, harmony in the kingdom, ebony and ivory earned. And so today we'll be looking at the poetic devices employed, that is, the poetic devices used in this poem Racism by Sonya Olu. The poetic devices employed in this poem are apostrophe, rhetorical question, antithesis, simile, personification, repetition, alliteration, symbolism, and metaphor. Apostrophe is when the poet or the writer addresses a person, an idea, or abstract noun directly as if they were present. And this we have in line 1, line 6, and line 12. We have racism or racism. Now, the way racism was being called upon, it was as if racism was a person and was present. Poetic device is what we call apostrophe. The second is rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is an interrogation or question that does not need an answer because the answer is known and visible to all. Now, this we have in line 9 and 10. Haven't you seen that people are the same? Now, line 9 says, haven't you seen? And there is a question mark there. So we can see that the poet is not trying to ask a question that of which he demands answer. He's just asking a question, and obviously the answer is known. So this is what we call rhetorical question, and it's one of the devices used in the poem. Next is antithesis. Antithesis is when you place two words, terms, or ideas in line of a poetry, but this time it is not placed side by side like oxymoron. Antithesis does not place these words side by side, but they are in the same line of the poem. Here we have an ebony and ivory, like good and bad live same. Now we have the word ebony, ivory, which are opposite words, good and bad, in the same line of the poem, but they are not placed side by side. So this is what we refer to as antithesis. In 11, we observe the use of simile with the use of the word like in this line. And ebony and ivory like good and bad. Now the word like is used to compare ebony and ivory to the good and bad. So here we have the use of simile. Also, personification was used in the poem. If you look at line 13, we have the cancer that is devouring humanity. We know that only human beings, or maybe perhaps animal or living things, can devour. But now it is said that cancer, which is an abstract noun that we can't see with our physical eyes, now is given the attribute of what? Devouring. So here we have the use of what? Personification. Also in line 9, which reads, haven't you seen? Now the you there refers to racism, and here we can see that the poet asked racism a question, like he's asking a human being who has the ability to do what? To answer that question. So here we also see the use of personification. Also, there is a use of repetition as a poetic device in this poem. In our previous class, we discussed that repetition is when a word or a line is repeated in other lines of the poem. Here we have the word universe. Universe is repeated in lines 12 and 16. Also, we have harmony. The word harmony is repeated in lines 14 and 17. The line racism or racism is repeated in line 1, 6 and 13. The words ebony and ivory is repeated in line 14, 11 and 18. The word same is repeated in line 10 and 11. The word leave is repeated in lines 11 and 14. Another poetic device used in this poem is alliteration. Alliteration, which is the repetition of consonant sound, same consonant sound in lines of a poem. We have in line 10 that people are the same. Now we have the in that, the in the. So the repetition of the sound there is what we call alliteration. Also, we have in this line 11, an ebony and ivory like good and bad leave same. We have the repetition of the sound. Also, we have in lines 14, learn to live in the harmony we should. We have the sound in learn, in live. The use of symbolism in this poem is seen with the use of the word ebony and ivory. Ebony here represents the blacks, while ivory represents the whites. Finally, the use of metaphor. We can see the use of metaphor in the poem in major lines of the poem. Here we can see that racism was compared to cankerworm, caterpillar, and cancer in the following lines. The cankerworm that eats through the universe, which is in line 2. The caterpillar that burrows through human skin, line 7. The cancer that is devouring humanity. Now we can see the comparison here, the comparison of racism to cankerworm, caterpillar, and cancer without the use of as and like. These are the devices employed in the poem Racism by E. Sonyaolu. Hope you have learned so much in this lesson. See you in class. Bye.